A delivery to Morgan West, the Los Angeles Morgan car dealer, and now Janus Motorcycles display location, a charity auction at the Chuck Jones Center for Creativity, south of the city in Irvine, and a meeting with a marketing mentor later in the same week up the coast in Santa Cruz provided a perfect excuse for me to stash an extra Halcyon 450 in our delivery van. Thanks to Woody's flexibility, he would be able to take a few extra days and retrieve the bike at my planned destination of Santa Cruz. Woody dropped me off early Monday morning in Malibu, just north of Los Angeles. My plan for the first day was to follow Highway 1 up the coast to the approximate halfway point of Morrow Bay. While the second day promised even better riding with more picturesque roads, I had purchased a map in advance of the trip, and in conjunction with Google Maps, I had found what looked like an interesting detour up into the hills above Santa Barbara. I left this open as a possibility. I fueled up the bike as well as my 30-ounce spare fuel bottle and headed north on the Pacific Coast Highway. Okay, so we could take a quick look at the route. We've started about here, and we're probably not too far up the road from there. We'll go through Oxnard. This is the 101 up through Santa Barbara, and there's a potential for a little mountain loop up there, depending on how the timing is going. And then we will continue on up the 101 until right before Solvang, where we will take a left on the old road 1, Pacific Coast Highway, which should be really more picturesque. Once we get north of Santa Barbara, the traffic will get less, and then we'll wind our way up here through Pismo Beach, San Luis Obispo, to tonight's destination, which is Morrow Bay. So I expect some more winding roads here. Of course, tomorrow will really be the most picturesque riding up the coast here and back through between the 101 and the 1. We will not be able to go all the way up to Big Sur because there's a landslide right about there. So today the goal is just to get up the coast to Morrow Bay, about the halfway point. 250 something miles, maybe a little more, we'll see. It's less than that on the interstate, but we're going to take a more rambling approach up the road. For the first part of the morning, I sped along the combined Highway 1 and 101 up to Santa Barbara, alternating between split-lane freeway and slower 4-lane highway, passing through occasional banks of fog. Lane splitting, or filtering, is legal in California, and reminded me of travel in Europe, where motorcycles and scooters all filter to the head of traffic at lights and speed off ahead at the change of the light. Quite a sensible solution. Just south of Oxnard, where the road clings to the narrow beach below steep bluffs, I pulled over to the side of the road to take in the incredible view. I continued on through Oxnard, Ventura, and smaller towns like Montecito. By mid-morning, I reached the outskirts of Santa Barbara. Taking a look at the map, I decided that the detour up into the mountains looked like too much fun to miss. It's now exactly 11:30, and we are in Santa Barbara. So, get on the bike here, sit here. We have made it up the road here to Santa Barbara, and there's a little loop road up into the mountains here that, if you can see that here, a little loop up into the mountains that looks like a lot of fun. It'll add a little time to the trip, but I think it might be the only chance we have on this day of doing any mountain riding. So I think we're gonna try and make this little loop up over the hills above Santa Barbara until we rejoin the Highway 101 or Highway 1 and keep on going up. So I think we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. Unwisely, opting not to top off my fuel, I wound my way up through the well-kept residential neighborhoods clinging to the hillsides. As I continued to climb, the temperature began to rise in the morning light. Vegetation changed from the more tropical coastal palms to drier, more desert-like plants like chaparral. The further up the mountain I rode, the more it reminded me of a ride I took in the mountains above Genoa, Italy, on a borrowed 1970s Vespa 125, several years before we founded Janus. Santa Barbara has almost exactly the same feel and climate as a Mediterranean city, right down to the narrow roads, plants, terrain, and even rural architecture. Near the top, I passed several hang gliders preparing to launch. Around this time, I noticed the fuel light starting to blink at me and cursed my decision not to refuel, but consoled myself with the thought that at least I would likely be able to coast all the way back down. I continued to climb and wind around the peaks, stopping to soak in the spectacular views over Santa Barbara and out to the Channel Islands off the coast in the distance. It is about 12:30. We've made it up into the mountains here above Santa Barbara, California, and it's absolutely gorgeous. These roads are, some of the corners are first gear. That's how tight they are. I've definitely worn off the bottom of the foot pegs on the 450. Fantastic. It's getting kind of warm up here. Having a great time. The bike is doing fantastically, and the view out over the Pacific Ocean is incredible. We can see down to Santa Barbara and the ocean beyond it. We're gonna go up a little higher into the mountains, maybe take a break up there, and then wind our way back down again and continue on up the Pacific coast. After the noise and bustle of Los Angeles, the silence among the rocks and scattered pine trees along the crest of the Santa Ynez Mountains was a welcome respite. Winding along the mountain peaks, I eventually came to Painted Cave Road and took a left, winding through agricultural land and farms, until the road narrowed even further and began to descend sharply through forested slopes back towards Santa Barbara. This road was absolutely fantastic in its winding, circuitous route, switching back on itself in impossibly tight hairpins that even a small car would find difficult. The Halcyon 450 handled it perfectly. Around this point, I decided to simply shut off the engine and coast down through the more forested road as it plunged to the coast in an effort to save fuel. Eventually, I reached the San Marcos Pass road and poured in my spare fuel, I had not actually run out, but I didn't feel like chancing it. I decided to take the San Marcos Pass Road back down to Highway 1 and the nearest gas station I could find. Filling up just off the highway, I answered several questions from interested drivers who wanted to know about the bike and when it was made. A classic Janus experience. As the temperature had continued to rise, I took off my sweatshirt and stowed it under the bungee straps on the Duluth saddlebags along with my map. Back on Highway 101, I sped on up the coast, making good time past the town of Goleta until the road turned right and began to climb up and away from the coastline, through grass-covered hills and up through a tunnel assigned for Highway 1 towards Lompoc. I stopped on the off-ramp with idling trucks for a snack and a quick check of the map in the shade of some trees before heading northeast toward Lompoc. We have just gotten off of Highway 101 and we are turning on to Highway 1 for Lompoc. So we are north of Santa Barbara and we're finally going to get off of where 101 and 1 kind of go side by side, and we're going to dip back over more toward the coast. Looks like some neat riding over there as well. So for the moment, I'm going to get a little snack here and kind of resituate, take a little break, and then we'll get back on the road. We've come up from down here, gotten up to Santa Barbara, and gone up in the mountains above Santa Barbara. That incredible view and those very, very twisty roads on the Painted Cave Road, back down onto Highway 101. We've taken it all the way up the coast, up into this mountains here, through that tunnel, or through a tunnel, and then we're taking this, Highway 1, off over toward Lompoc. And we'll continue along that. I don't think we'll need to get back on Highway 101 until briefly, no, we'll just cross it before going over to Morrow Bay, where we'll be spending the evening. This portion of the ride was between long, sweeping, grass-covered hills with patches of some kind of beautiful yellow flowers, all waving in the stiff wind as I wound down towards the flatland surrounding the dusty, windswept town of Lompoc. I missed my turn north onto Highway 1 and headed about 2 miles off course toward the ocean, but a quick check of the map had me back en route. Riding through these flat fields, the wind tossed me and the bike around quite a bit. Once back on the northern portion of 1, I headed north from town, and I stopped again to put on my sweatshirt and neck gaiter to clean my helmet visor. The next portion of the ride had my head bobbing around in the gusty wind and caused the bike to lean over at an angle even though I was traveling in a straight line. The landscape, as I headed further north past Vandenberg Space Force Base and Orcutt, became flatter and dustier with agricultural land on both sides and mountains visible in the distance until I reached the town of Guadalupe. Just south of Pismo Beach, Highway 1, a 2-lane road at this point, winds down off a plateau back to the ocean through what looked like eucalyptus trees to turning left through flat agricultural land. From Pismo Beach to San Luis Obispo was a quick jaunt back on Highway 101 before getting back on the one down to Morrow Bay, my destination for the evening. Woody, who had taken the shorter route up Highway 1 with the van, had arrived before me and found a picturesque little motel right downtown on the water. Well, we have finally arrived in our destination of Morrow Bay, which is behind me here. Nice view. The bike has done fantastically on the whole trip, and I'm not even saddle sore. That seat is extremely comfortable. I am just I was kind of thinking I was ready to go a little further. No, but This is a great spot to stop. We have some great riding tomorrow, another day before we arrive up in Santa Cruz. So, great riding day. Got some great footage. Went up some amazing mountain roads, and I think this is a great culmination. Morrow Bay forms a natural harbor off the Pacific, with its most prominent feature being an enormous rock marking the entrance. The Morro rock formed an incredible backdrop for dinner and a few beers as we looked out over the moored sailboats swinging round in the changing tide and listened to the barking of seals out across the water. The downtown has a boardwalk right along the waterline with restaurants and boat rentals. We learned that the peace of Morrow Bay would not be for long, as the season was just about to open in the next week.